In the wake of Sunday's mass shooting at a Texas church, evangelical leaders have been forced to confront the balance between peace and protection of the vulnerable. At least 26 people died in the shooting at First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, one of about 2,000 Southern Baptist churches in Texas with fewer than 100 members. Despite the tragedy, church leaders don't expect conservative support of gun rights to change. Many American evangelicals have the same response to the shooting: people are screwed up and they need God, not necessarily tighter gun laws. The problem is that human nature is fallen, Jim Richards, the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention executive director, said as he drove to the shooting scene on Monday. People look for simple solutions to violence because they are frustrated, Eric Metaxas, a popular evangelical author and a member of President Trump's Faith Advisory Board, said. But he believes there is a deeper root to America's problems. What is happening in American culture that is causing people to do this, Metaxas said. It's not guns. We've always had guns. It's a spiritual sickness. That theology of fallen people, or a spiritual sickness, combined with biblical teaching against violence, has caused evangelical churches to struggle with stances on anti-gun legislation and church policy. On one hand, they believe God has called them to live peacefully. On the other, they want to practically protect their congregations. Jay Janatans, instead of entering the political arena and reforming gun laws, churches often develop security plans and put preventative measures in place to protect their Sunday morning gatherings. Ben Woodard, a Southern Baptist children's minister from Tennessee, said, "Smaller churches may not have security teams in place, but mega churches often do. Many evangelicals take the disposition that guns don't kill people, people kill people, and if an active shooter arrives during worship, some congregations are ready to fire back." Woodard's church has a trained, volunteer security team in place during Sunday services. Churches and pastors do have the responsibility of protecting their congregation from people who would want to harm them, the same way that schools, hospitals, shopping centers, and entertainment events protect the public, Woodard said. This does not undermine the biblical call for peace and non-violence, but it does acknowledge dangers in this world and the depravity of human beings. The Texas Southern Baptist Convention, of which the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs is a member, has armed cops and plainclothes officers at their statewide convention meetings and at some of the larger churches affiliated with the denomination. The idea that Christians are called to do nothing is a misunderstanding of turning the other cheek, Metaxas said, referring to a biblical teaching that some interpret as a call to total nonviolence. First, it's a spiritual problem, but that doesn't mean you don't do what you can. But you've got to call evil, evil. Richards agrees and believes the Bible allows violence when necessary. We're not pacifists. We have the right to defend your loved ones, the right to defend the vulnerable. Christians have the civil authority to use lethal force if necessary, he said, referencing a passage in the book of Romans. Others disagree. Aaron Householder, a professor at an evangelical university, highlighted the contradiction of mourning with victims while simultaneously supporting gun rights. We need to do much better than to say, "I send my thoughts and prayers, but don't touch my guns," Householder said. We hurt our individual ministries, we sully the good news of the gospel, and we take the name of Christ in vain if we do not mourn with those who mourn, and especially if we align ourselves with the very instruments of death that cause the mourning. Woodard said he didn't think the tragedy will cause a shift in conservative thoughts on gun reform. Gun reform laws involve a much larger political stratosphere that I don't imagine most pastors would feel comfortable making a public stand on, he said. Even if a pastor did have a deep personal conviction for one side or the other, it is unlikely that this would be an issue that an entire congregation could come to agreement on, much less an entire denomination of autonomous Southern Baptist churches.